Hello, family. Welcome to JFK Today, your direct link to all things politics, comedy, and culture. I'm your host, Janaya Future Khan, champion yapper and frequent nuisance in the activist and comedy worlds. Let's get dialed in. So here's the overview, okay? How Kamala can end Israel's one-sided war. I have been sitting with this. I know you have. We're going to end it on a good note. Don't worry, y'all. Got some good news about some beautiful black men. But before we get there, how can Kamala end Israel's one-sided war on Palestine in Gaza, right? Because we know that our chameleon, Kamala Harris, she's coming, and she's been going. She's been going really good. But so too have the protesters that have followed her from place to place and will continue to follow her right up to the DNC, as they should. So, you know, it made me think of couples therapy. This is a good ad lib. Trust me on this, right? It's Monday morning. We're going, right? One of the things that you learn in therapy is to set people up to succeed, to not expect them to transform or just be whoever you want because you think that's best. And I was like, what would it look like to find a solution that worked within the parameters of what Kamala Harris is? Because a lot of us lefties, you can identify wherever you're on the spectrum, lefties, liberals, progressives, whatever. We're all unified on one thing, which is support to Israel, right? And the bombing, the blanket bombing and murder and abuse of Palestinians must end. We are completely united on that. In fact, that has become something of a bipartisan issue. It's something that we all kind of agree on for the most part. It makes for strange bedfellows. I'm not going to count the weirdos who are like dabbling in really strange anti-Semitism to criticize Israel. It's like, no, you don't need to invent a conspiracy. It's just a very shitty government that's doing the most monstrous things. But what would a solution look like? One that Kamala Harris could actually do because she is Kamala Harris, right? So here's the thing. We've got Democrats rallying behind her. She's being confronted by protesters. They're going to follow her right up to the DNC. And one of the main things that they're demanding, right, that we're all demanding is we want her to endorse an arms embargo against Israel, right? So currently, her chief foreign police advisor, that's Phil Gordon, he's ruled that out. He's kind of put out a flat refusal. And we know that this risks alienating progressives in key states like Michigan, right? We know there's a huge Muslim population there, and sparking an ugly confrontation, not just at the convention for it, but the months to come. And we're running out of time, right? This is a great time to crunch. It's a great time to keep our hand on the lever and to yank it down, right? There is simply too much dedicated in America's congressional brain trust in its support of Israel as existential. But there is a way forward that allows Kamala Harris to go beyond simply calling for a ceasefire, which is what she has said publicly, and saying that, quote, far too many, right, end quote right there, civilians in Gaza have died. Those are the two things that I've been able to collect from her that she has said fairly consistently, right? So can she proceed without supporting an arms embargo is the question. One, right, it's likely that she won't. It's likely that she will not support an arms embargo at this particular moment. So what can she do where a clear break from Joe Biden's damn near unconditional support of Israel and its war, right, in what every human rights organization that means anything in the world and every legal scholar worth their salt, right, is saying this is genocide. So how does Kamala Harris be Kamala Harris, not the radical progressive leader we want her to be, or rather specifically that we deserve? How can she do that? I got two words for you. Leahy's Law, okay? Leahy's Law. So this is a law that's been on the books, right? That means it's been written wherever for more than a decade. It prohibits the United States from assisting any unit of a foreign security force that commits, quote, gross violations of human rights. Aid can be reinstated if the foreign country adequately punishes any of the perpetrators, right? This was passed by Congress in 1997. It bears the name of former Senator Patrick Leahy, and it has been applied hundreds of times, right? This is from the Times. This is also covered in ProPublica. ProPublica especially is, I love that place. But anyway, right? This, by the way, this hundreds of times, that includes against America's own allies like Colombia and Mexico. But according to the Times, Leahy's law has never been applied to Israel, the country that over the past 8 decades has received more U.S. aid by far than any other place. We're talking about billions and billions and billions of dollars a year for many, many, many years with no end in sight. And I promise you that this law, the reason this law has not been applied is not because the IDF doesn't commit serial abuses. They do, right? Back in May of this year, Charles Blaha, gangster last name, Blaha, a former State Department official, told ProPublica that there are literally dozens of Israeli security force units that have committed gross violations of human rights and thus should be ineligible for U.S. aid. And this is a guy who knows. Blaha, not just because his name is gangster as hell, right? This is the person who oversaw the office, right, that was charged with enforcing the Leahy law from 2016 to 2023. So what I'm saying is there's a precedent that's set, and I'm aware of what I'm going to sound like, but you know that this country has gone horseshoe and I sound ass backwards when I'm just like, Kamala, girl, it's time for you to enforce the law. You were out here doing all this terrible stuff as an AG when it came to truancy and, you know, disenfranchised families, marginalized families, families of color were disproportionately impacted by that, but it was the law. That was your whole premise. Well, here's another law that you can actually enforce that would be just a complete good for your campaign, would align with the actual beliefs of just, I don't know, humanity, some kind of redemption for the human condition, and would completely align your forces. Right now, you run the risk of fracturing the support that you have because this kumbaya moment, this Kamala kumbaya, couldn't help it. Sorry, I'm sorry. It's not going to last. The more that she comes out with a policy platform, an economic platform, a foreign policy platform, the more gaps there are going to be, and the more she stands at risk of alienating the very base of people she needs to support. What I'm saying is, enforce the law. Oh, I know. I can't believe it. I can't believe I'm saying this. I can't believe me, right? The gender outlaw, the gay ass, the super lefty, the chronically unhinged activist turned internet person who was re-radicalized because I never got the ending to the OA that we deserved, right? I am now saying enforce the law. Enforce it. Stop the endless one-sided war that Israel is perpetrating against the Palestinian people by using Leahy's law. This spring, ProPublica reported that an expert State Department panel had recommended that Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, right? That's Blinken right now. He's all up in the office right now, up in Congress, right? This panel advised him, they recommended that Blinken cut off assistance to several units of the Israeli military and police after reviewing allegations that they had committed human rights abuses preceding the current war in Gaza. That means, right, this was happening before the last 9 months. In May, right, Mr. Blinken told Congress that Israel had adequately punished the members of units accused of serial abuses and U.S. aid would thus keep flowing. By the way, let me just say, I mean, I'm gonna verify that, but that's a bunch of bullshit in case we really just needed the facts, right? Like there's no department that vets that process, and it's not public. So whether or not that actually happened is completely unclear, right? So we have no way of fully knowing whether or not the issues and those abuses that the panel had flagged were actually adequately addressed. Blinken has reportedly decided to even allow the United States to continue arming Israel's Netza Yehuda battalion, even after this incident in 2022. So this is when members of that battalion dragged a 78-year-old Palestinian American man from his car near his home village in the West Bank. They blindfolded him, they bound and gagged him, and they left him near a construction site. He was unconscious, and when they came back and removed his bindings about 40 minutes later, he was pronounced dead. Right? This was a stress-induced heart attack. That's what the autopsy said. That's what these men, the IDF, the state of Israel, this is the kind of violence that they condone. And this is the lightest kind that I could possibly think of in this moment, right? What happened after that? 17 months later, Israel's military advocate general, that's a mouthful for a whole lot of nothing, said that the soldiers would face disciplinary measures but declined to press charges. Also, we have no proof that that happened. So to be clear, in Israel, abuses like this and the erasure of those abuses are typical. According to the Israeli human rights group, Yesh Din, right, less than 1% of Palestinian complaints against Israeli soldiers between 2017 and 2021 led to prosecution. And we talk about the parallels between oppressed peoples, right? If we just take a moment to consider what it's like when an entire state and apparatus, its law enforcement, its government, right, its court systems are designed against you. We have all seen the ramifications of this in America. Think about Sonia Massey. That was one of the rare examples where a police officer was immediately removed, but we didn't see that happen with Sandra Bland. Right? We didn't see that happen with so many black folks, women, men, children, murdered by police or gun-wielding vigilantes. That's what happens when you have an entire state apparatus that is so far away from truth, away from justice or balance or fairness, that to even suggest, for example, a jury of peers seems almost farcical. And still, we see more progress here, right? Because of our ability to harness community, to mass mobilize, to see movements through, because of our wonderful fighters, right? Because of our public broadcasting, because of our access to the internet, there are ways that we can fight this. There are ways that we can amplify. There are ways that we can unite. And we do. Every change that we've seen in this country was hard fought and hard won. But that's not possible for Palestinians. Israel is the most sophisticated system of apartheid the world has ever seen. It has learned from every single kind of apartheid. We're going back to the way that Canada treated its indigenous populations, right? Hitler talks about being influenced by and moved and motivated by Canada's treatment of its indigenous populations. That there was the blueprint for so much of the Holocaust. The Holocaust was so much a blueprint for South African apartheid. South African apartheid, so much the blueprint. We're talking about here in America, in the South. Can fast forward now and look at Israel and its apartheid system, and you understand why it's so intelligent. And part of the ways and part of the reason why it can be, and part of the reason why it moves with such impunity is because of America's dishonorable, disgusting, committed funding of Israel's atrocities, while its own people struggle, some starve. We're seeing issues around houselessness, working multiple jobs, in debt. Healthcare is being sick could be a death sentence, right? While we're harnessing up migrants and immigrants as scapegoats, this is where we're at. Funding atrocities, right? Now, even some of you, you're down, you're with it, you get it, but you might be thinking to yourself, but isn't Israel a little bit different? Like, for example, right? Because of Israel because of Jewish people's specific kind of suffering, right? Isn't it unique? The answer is no. There is no population in the world, right? No oppressed population, no marginalized population that suffers uniquely. One system learns from the other. And the second that we start saying that because any population of people have suffered, that now you get to bring out and commit any kind of atrocity you feel like, that doesn't really make sense, does it? Right? So for anyone who's arguing that Israel either has a right because of its unique history, or maybe some of you might be thinking, and it's totally okay to think it, right? That maybe Israel's particular position is the thing that makes it unique, right? Because we've been spoon-fed this narrative, Israel surrounded by its enemies, and that's why everybody's like this. That's the reason. But if that's the case, then why doesn't the U.S. apply the Lehiyah to Ukraine? Right? That's also resisting a great power invasion. That's what Israel says it's afraid of, surrounded by its enemies. So why was that applied to Ukraine and not Israel, right? For several years, the United States prohibited assistance to part of Ukraine's National Guard. That ban was only just lifted this past June, right? Here's the thing. No matter how you slice or dice it, the way that Israel is moving and its quest for an endless, relentless war, its need to conjure up and create enemies everywhere, and its use of American missiles to see through its agenda, it's just strategically foolish. There is no other way to look at it. Even if you are somebody somehow that believes that everything that they're doing is right, you have to objectively see this as strategically foolish. Murdering and killing Palestinians does not keep anyone in Israel safe. Bombing and blowing up and starting a potential all-out war with Iran does not keep Israelis safe. Brutalizing Israeli people who are against Netanyahu's government does not keep Israelis safe. Killing and murder, the way that they are especially, will only beget more violence, and often from within. And what do I mean when I say that? I mean, let's look at what's actually happening inside of Israel, in the IDF right now. The absolute depravity it invites, that kind of blanket impunity, right? Last month, and I was just like, I don't know how to say this. I've tried to wrap my head around this. Obviously, I've been sitting with it for days, weeks, hours, months. However, trying to wrap my head around this, the way that we tried to wrap our head last week around why Jewish people would feel like getting in bed with Nazis makes more sense than any Muslim person somehow being in charge. Like it's wild. It is wild to me. It's just straight up racism. But okay, so last month, Israeli military police tried to question reservists accused of sexual assault at the Sdi Timen army base, right, which housed detainees from Gaza. Several dozen protesters were joined by a far-right member of the Knesset, which that's their Congress in Israel, who pushed his way through the army base's gates. Why were they fighting, you guys? Why? They were, I'm struggling to say this, but this is literally what, they were protesting the right to rape and sexually abuse Palestinian detainees. That's literally why they were there. And when they won, they celebrated. That's actually what happened. It was one of the most disgusting, disturbing things in a litany, an endless list of disgusting and disturbing things that I cannot seem to wrap my mind around just right alongside you. It's that's really what they were fighting for. So Kamala, who we know many lefties call the cop, the cop politician, is now in a position where she doesn't have to step out of that weird existential nonsense that America's tied up with Israel. She doesn't have to just call for a ceasefire or support an arms embargo. She could literally just enforce Leahy's law, and it would see through all of that, because it would mean an actual asset mapping of the human rights violations and blanket abuse that Israel is perpetrating against the Palestinian people. My girl loves to enforce the law. Get it, Kamala. Enforce it. Do it. Because that's where we're at. If you want to actually win this thing, and if we have demands that we need to make that can be met, and we should absolutely, for the record, still be calling for an arms embargo and then working our way around that money, because the money's the big thing. Getting rid of that $3 billion a year paycheck that goes to Israel is the big thing. I mean, Netanyahu is a dog off a leash. He really doesn't give a damn what anybody has to say. This is a guy, though, who wants Donald Trump to win. It is in his best interest that Donald Trump wins. And we've seen what AIPAC is willing to do, and groups like AIPAC. Leahy's law might be a way for Kamala to win decisively. I don't know that I would call it a win for the left necessarily, but I would call it progress of some sort, because it would mean Israel could not just blanketly abuse Palestinians the way that they have, because finally a superpower in the world would be watching them. And since we're funding it, you'd think we'd be paying attention, our American government, but not so much. So, Leahy's law, look it up. It's kind of dope. Israel is not different. I know that was that's a belief that Israel likes to tell itself, but it's not. And I'm getting sick and tired of this idea that this circumstance, this context, this country, and its people are somehow unique. And I promise you this. I'm just telling you this as someone who's seen it. I've just been around. I've seen it. The only universal language that we have, right? We look at privilege and we're like, oh, privilege. It's not wide enough. The only shared experience that all people have across every kind of walk of life, in every country, through every language, in every gender, and every kind of body, is pain. That is our universal language, right alongside laughter and music. Pain. There is no uniqueness in that, and there's something really beautiful in that. And only when we try to step out of that and apply this weird exceptionalism narrative do things get really friggin' weird. So, with that, on to the next. I want to move into something very brief but very important, which is the movement to de-red pill Black men is working. I am very excited. I'm very excited about this because I have to tell you something. The right made a very concerted effort, particularly around Me Too and Donald Trump, to try to radicalize men of color, right? There were men of color. They saw an opportunity in them because we, the left, we don't really actively try to recruit men, and men actively try to, stay away from us. And I'm not talking about the gangsters. You know who I'm talking about. We've not done a great job at intentionally, working around and with and through men, and particularly men of color. I'm talking about all leftist spaces. Nobody's unique in that. But what we've seen in the meantime have been Black men organizing in their own communities, Black men organizing each other. And it's been one of the most beautiful redemption arcs for masculinity that I can think of. You've got the Black Man Lab, right, which for nearly a decade sought, weekly to create a safe space and sacred healing space for Black men in Atlanta, right? I know Phil Agnew and a few others out in Florida have Black Men Build, but they are turning them towards a massive voter base. And for the record, it wasn't just us who have been ignoring, maybe ignoring is not the right word, failing to engage men in ways that make sense to them. But Democrats, progressives, libs, they haven't either. Black men as a voting base has kind of been swept under the rug. Black women as a voter base are treated as sort of like the safety plug that's going to come in and the moral compass of the country that we abuse and ignore and shit on for the rest of the year. But Black men are reanimating fully. They're coming out as a whole force. And they have this moment with Kamala Harris has refocused attention on black men. And I got to tell you, Republicans have seen the value of black men, I think, before many people in the Democratic Party. So the fact that they're seeing the value in themselves means everything to this movement. I'm going to tell you something. This matters a lot to me because I think we can all agree, right? And just go down this hole with me. This is a good time. I think we can all agree that men going to therapy was not the right call. It was not. It gave them a bunch of therapy speak that they didn't know how to use. We can admit it was a mistake. I'm not suggesting that men going to therapy is a mistake. No. I'm saying that our call for them to go to therapy without anticipating what that would actually look like, i.e. Jonah Hill, that maybe wasn't our best move because we didn't account for the fact that men are dumb. All right. Let me explain the dumb, though. Give me a second, because y'all know I love men. So let me explain. Right? If we just broke things down, like unrelated to gender or sex, right? Just biology, get it out of there. If we're just talking about the hormones themselves, estrogen is the pretty hormone, right? It's also the crazy hormone. If there's too much of it, you kind of lose your marbles, right? That's the you shut your mouth when you're talking to me hormone, right? And I know this because I am familiar with the estrogen sometimes, at one point in my life. But, it's only the crazy hormone because that's what happens when you're hyper intelligent, hyper aware, and it's mixed with a kind of powerlessness. But anyway, we digress. Meanwhile, testosterone is kind of like the casual violence hormone. Like it's not, and I reject the notion that men are inherently violent. But let's just say it's the it's the dumb hormone. I literally took testosterone and felt just words and my IQ just melt out of my ear a little bit, right? Like, and this is for fun, y'all. If you're taking this literally, please don't. But it is kind of true. Like, let me give you an example. After a game of pickup, right? This is me we're talking about, right? After a game of pickup, it was me and a bunch of dudes. And one of them said, right, the first one of us to move is gay. Why did I freeze? Why did I freeze? I'm literally so gay. Why did I freeze? It's testosterone. I was like, I'm not about to lose this. I'm not about to be the gay one. I am the gay one. I'm literally the gay one. It just does something to you where you're like, I gotta win. There's these rules. They're just made up. I gotta win. If you tell a man the floor is lava, he's leaping off that floor. There's something redeemable in that. But my point is, rather than say just go to therapy with no goal in front, as a unit, as a community, they put a goal in front of themselves. And that goal was changing the perceptions of each other and themselves in their community and as a voting base, and they won. They won. That is gorgeous. It makes me think of this time when I needed a security detail, right? I needed a security detail because I was getting all the little threats. And no officer, I was doing my college tour or whatever with these BLM talks. And no off-duty police officer wanted to be my security detail. I can't imagine why. I'm literally a kitten. I'm adorable. And so a friend called a friend called a friend, and the Nation of Islam showed up, right? And I'm surrounded by 8 beautiful black men in full suits and bow ties, and they just followed me around all day, and they had the cute little thingies in their ear, and they were flirting with each other, and it was amazing. They were exceptional at security, right? And this is a group of people that largely will not be engaged. Anyway, they were exceptional. They swept the hotel room. They were outside the windows. They were in the hallways. They were outside the door. Anyway, the biggest one, he definitely started to flirt with me, right? I mean, I looked like I just walked off the set of Battlestar Galactica. I mean, gay. Like my head was shaved, tennis ball shaved, right? This is what I mean. Testosterone is dumb. He was like, I'm drawn to you, so it's got to be this. And it's like, no, we're just 2 awesome people. But also, I was okay with the flirting because he was the biggest one, and, I like that. He could pick me up and help me put my carry-on up in an airplane. Anyway, he just, he handed me a rose one day, just out of the blue. Like, he never left my side that day. And I was like, oh my God, are there magicians in the Nation of Islam? This whole time we've been like, they're spreading hate and they jumped the shark after Malcolm. But really, they were just, learning magic tricks and, just pulling out a deck of cards and laying it out and just saying, pick a card, white devil. That's all they were doing. That's all they're doing. Joking. My point is, they didn't know my pronouns. I didn't know their pronouns. But for that night, They believed that my life was worth protecting, and I believed that their life was worth protecting, and that was enough. That's what I mean when I say coalitions. That's what I mean when I say building trust. And right now, we have had our hand out for a while. They're reaching back. So let's hold on. Let's actually get onto it. That's how we win. You know, there's always going to be a Kamala or a Trump or some other thing, but we win when we can actually hold the humanity in each other with some humor and some grace. So with that, why don't we hit the VMs and get that question of the day?
Hi, Future. My name is Jack. I'm a physician assistant with one of the street medicine teams in LA, doing primary care with people who are unhoused in Los Angeles. I'd like to thank you first for taking on the issue of homelessness. I'm responding directly to your podcast entitled Homes Not Bombs. Thank you for sharing your personal experience, and I think it's super valuable. So I have this question. I, by the way, work with Mayor Bass's team, frequently, and find that there are many amazing individuals. They're working full-time to sort of address the issue of homelessness. I work with a ton of people who've been housed by Inside Safe, Mayor Bass's initiative. So I don't know. I would not say that the issue is her not caring. I think she's working within a capitalist system and does, as you pointed out, have various forces she's working with. But I think that given that that's the case, it's certainly that it's not an issue of caring. Mm-hmm. I think it's a choice on how to address it. And I'm asking you what you would do to address the issue of homelessness in Los Angeles, given the society in which we are functioning. And your answer could say, could be change the society altogether and what runs it. But then again, I'm just looking for specifics on how and what you would do to address the issue of homelessness in Los Angeles and fix it. Thank you. Can't wait to hear what you say. Bye.
This is a great question. And I'm going back to that episode. I'm recalling that I spent a good portion of that talking about the surprise of NIMBYism and how actually effective it is at stopping any kind of progress, because Karen Bass is far more progressive than, most politicians out there. And here's what I mean, though, because I can't exactly remember if I said she doesn't care. And, I try to stick to things that I know I can qualify with fact. So if I did say that, which is likely because I was probably on one, let me clarify it when I say this, right? I believe that good work is being done. Thank you, actually, for highlighting some of that good work. But here's my concern. The main issue here is what happens when we have career politicians. Career politicians are some of the worst, most corrosive forces to democracy and progress across North America, across the United States. And it sucks. It truly sucks. And how do you evoke change when you're going to piss off the people whose votes you need to get into office again? It is a horrible juggling act. So what I would say is if our roles were reversed, right? And this is it with Karen Bass, is like that dope person, I'm sure on the ones, right, is going to be in the crosshairs of those who are, radicals and, fighting truth to power here or there. But in that episode, I've talked about the fact that we've powwowed at tables at different times and in different instances. But being a career politician makes it so that it's about pleasing constituents instead of evoking real, long-lasting change. This is not specific to Karen Bass. This is actually across the board. If it were me, I would know that I was never going to run for office again. That means I wouldn't have to care about the police union. Who cares what they think? Who cares what they want from me? It would mean I don't care if I'm going to piss off this neighborhood of people. If I have the power to evoke this change right here, right now, I'm going to make sure that there's a list of all the lobby groups, because we know the real estate lobbies are the ones who are actually running this country right alongside things like AIPAC and the NRA. I think the best thing that one can do in power is remove the veil and curtain that obfuscates those forces. So if I were in that situation, if I were mayor, I mean, sure, 100%, you were totally right. Overthrow the whole goddamn system, 100%. But build up the structures anyway. If it's government land, right, and you've got the right to do it, bulldoze it through, see it through. I don't care, right? And I'm not a red tape, be damned. Cut it down, get in trouble. Eat a white collar crime charge. I don't care. If it meant that 30, 40, 50 families now have a different quality of life, if it meant that there's better housing options that are around shopping centers where there's pharmacies and groceries that are a walkable distance, it's worth it. I think that one of the main issues is getting away from this idea that people need to be career politicians in order to do it. I would love to see us cycling our folks in and out. But we know that getting in office is so damn hard. So, yeah, I would just build it. I would build everything. I would just build everything. And I would redirect all those funds that are supposed to keep all these ridiculous players happy that I would need to stay in office. Fuck them. They're out. They're gone. All that money is going to what a great legacy to leave off of. I'm going to spend a little bit more time thinking of this question. I'm actually going to circle back to it. I get a lot of that from these questions, and I'm grateful. But that's my first impulse. My first impulse is to say that I think career politicians are some of the worst things to progressive movements because it's so unbelievably hard to win in that context. And the other thing is, yeah, I would see through every possible thing that I could because I'm not a career politician. I wonder if we have ways to build up more capacity for this. That's my question, because would that actually lead to some kinds of, to more accessible housing, to free housing? Could we reverse treatment? Could we see unhoused and homeless people as the value add to communities that they actually are? Because here's the thing, neighborhood folks are never going to want us there. And I say us because I remember that time very well in my life. And I know how easily any of us, including myself, can return to that place. So let them be mad. Because the thing is, they get mad and then they see that very little actually changed for them. And actually it might even be for the better. And then they get the fuck over it. And that's what I think a lot of people, particularly in America, need to confront is like, you're not the protagonist in the story. Get the fuck over yourself. A value add for people, for your neighbor is a value add for you. So with that, thank you for that dope question. Thank you all for being here today. Why don't we hit that end music? Yep. I got to tell y'all, that I'm so grateful that you're here listening to JFK Today. It means the world to me. This show really is a labor of love. New episodes drop 4 times a week. Send us your voice note questions at jfktodayshow@gmail.com. Shout out to KR and the JFK team, and shout out to you, the listeners, who made this so possible.